Welcome everyone to this week's Expertise networking session. Good to see you all. Today's topic is reveal the gold within, and the gold is within ourselves. And Carl, who is a member of our community, will be facilitating today's session and sharing the wisdom. So Carl, over to you.
Thanks, Afar. And yes, I absolutely love presenting this work. I'm very passionate about it, and I'm very excited that you're all here to listen today. There's a legend from an island in Indonesia, and Indonesia has lots of islands, and it's a legend because I've never managed to find it. But the legend was that the young people of Indonesia were required to build roads as part of their community service after school. And the saying that came out of that experience was that as I build the road builds me. And the first time I heard that story, I thought, oh, there's just so much to learn from such a simple story. And one interpretation of that story is that building those roads was actually a catalyst for these young people to reveal the adult qualities that were already within them, or put differently, to start the journey to reveal the gold within. And then also, for many of us, experience that frustration of trying to manifest, and we can relate to the thing is the brain doesn't actually give us what we want, and we often get what we want. And it makes sense that the brain actually attracts what it's wired to expect. So today in this discussion about revealing the gold within, really about how do we rewire the brain to show up as the best version of ourselves. And the first way to look at to rewire the brain is to change our internal state so that we can reveal the best version of ourselves. So much like the young people of Indonesia, to take on a challenge to build something meaningful and then embrace those challenges that come their way. And trust me, building roads are going to bring challenges. And then to forgive the emotions that arise because we made that decision. And then also a hidden factor, having enough self-love to do that. And then the second way to rewire or change our minds or rewire brains is looking at how we interact with others. So there's a theory that we can have whatever we want on condition we ask the right person in the right way. But to make that theory more difficult is that another theory that says, well, most of our communication is nonverbal. So really, to show up as the best version of ourselves, to be more likable, will not only help the nonverbal, but it'll also help us ask the right question in the right way, and in that way, get what we want. So as we go through today as an analogy or as a story, and you'll notice today I love stories, is think about reveal the gold within as a type of a cookout, a sort of a field full of groups of people that are making these slow cooked layered stews on a fire with a little pot and three legs, and really preparing a delicious meal. And sort of in a similar way, thinking about reveal the gold within is having ingredients to show up as the most amazing versions of ourselves. And Safa, we didn't talk. I did have a workshop that I can show. Is it a way to link it, or a workbook, or maybe not?
Well, yeah, just carry on. I'll share it in the chat.
Okay, that'll be fine. But it's really not important. You can make some notes. So essentially, in a set of ingredients about reveal the gold within, the first one we're going to look at is permission to choose ourselves, which is the how. How are we going to do this? Well, permission to choose ourselves. And then the second ingredient that we're going to look at is the why, the self-reflection, to find something meaningful, to find a way to reveal, to heal those sabotaging emotions. And then the third ingredient we're going to look at today is when and where, going through, embracing the challenges and forgiving the emotions as we go along. So we're really going to look at three concepts today. And the first one, and we're going to do the first one, and then we're going to have a breakout. So the first one is permission to choose ourselves. Now, a great quote, and a quote that I absolutely love, comes from Howard Thurman. And Howard was a spiritual advisor to Martin Luther King. And this is the quote, and I'm sure many of you have heard it. Don't ask what the world needs. Ask what makes you come alive and go and do it. Because what the world needs is people who come alive. And really, in the context of giving ourselves permission to choose, to come alive, putting ourselves first so that we can come alive, is in many ways a form of self-love. And as I said, the first ingredient of a cookout is really having that self-love to put ourselves first. Now, that doesn't mean we put ourselves first in everything in our lives, but certainly what we want is at least some aspect of our lives where we can put ourselves first. And as Howard Thurman says, at least one aspect of our lives where we're doing something that makes us come alive. But really the question becomes, well, can we choose ourselves? Can we prioritize our unique path without losing important relationships that really matter? And to me, this is a very, very underrated question, because although, as Howard Thurman would say, ask what makes you come alive and go and do it, which is very inspiring, it can be to many people can be unrealistic, if not threatening, because hidden behind in the shadows of our lives are no's. And there are yeses, and that's of course going to be the topic of the next breakout. But let's explore some of the sources of no. So I'm going to look at the source of no as sort of really two levels. So we can consider. Let me just see where I'm going. Yeah, quickly. Yes, as really two levels. So consider at the sabotages that come from a higher level, from the level of society, from our cultural structure. So let's explore some of the unspoken truths that really come with choosing ourselves. The sort of the honest about the burden that many people carry. Well, think about, for example, the mom who gives up her career and her dreams to raise a family, to raise children, and to and to support her husband's career. Or think about the dad who stays in a soul-draining job just to provide for the family. And then also think about many families families that are busy and chaotic and it's full of distractions. I mean, how in that world does one get to choose oneself? And then lastly, a moment for people who go through the motions of life, not even sure that that is even possible. And yes, I agree that many of these choices are made out of love and out of loyalty, out of exceptionally good values. But over time, they can become a burden. You can start experiencing a quiet loss of identity or a slow burning resentment. And the truth be known, if those are left too long, it can lead to really drastic action. People walking out of relationships, the high divorce rate, people walking out of jobs, retreating emotionally. And yes, I know it's happened to me. And then, so that's a sabotage at a higher level, the no's that come at the sort of cultural structural level of our society. But there also no's in our personal environment, because when we set a clear and worthy goal, we become uncomfortable because we know that's going to need transformation. And so when we set out with a clear and worthy goal, we start to have wishes and boundaries around time, around money, around health. And some of the people around us might find, create resistance. And then you can also get resistance from the inner dialogue, the inner resistance, conversations that we tell ourselves are the inner critic, the beliefs that come up. So that's really a look at no's, and we will discuss more in the breakout. But then there are also yeses, and a yes is a lot more difficult to grasp. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to tell you 3 stories to open the door to yeses. So my first story is, well, on my slide, you will see there's a butterfly. So why the butterfly? Well, the thing about being a caterpillar in the journey of the butterfly is it's really tough. Food can suddenly become scarce, lots of natural enemies. The exciting part is that in that butterfly is the potential to become an absolutely beautiful, glorious butterfly. And equally exciting is, like, no matter how stuck we might feel in our lives, within us is always a beautiful butterfly waiting to reveal itself. We're increasing our capacity to give and to receive, to reveal unique value that only you can reveal, showing up differently with confidence and innovation. beautiful butterflies inside us that are waiting to reveal themselves. But the paradox is, and it is a paradox, is there enough self-love to say yes to the challenges that in many ways we'd rather avoid, to also say yes to the healing and growth that we're going to get? So that's the first yes. The second yes is I want to go back to the cookout. So imagine you arrive at the cookout and you meet some friends there and you're chatting about recipes and tips and tricks, and a chef arrives. And the chef tells a story of getting up early in the morning, going to the market, choosing cherry red tomatoes, brinjals in season, how the ingredients were chosen. And almost every ingredient comes with an exciting story, and we get this mixture of passion and experience. And as we listen to that chef, we think, oh, maybe I'm going to pick up my game when I'm doing my cookout, and I'd really like to tell that meal. So the story of the chef is really a sort of a yes at another whole level. And then my third story, talking about the market, and this story happened about 720 AD, and the story is really about a Zen master, Banzan or Banzan, or also known as Wan Shan. And Banzan was looking for enlightenment. He was seeking enlightenment, and he was walking through the market one morning, and he overheard a conversation between a butcher and a customer. And the customer was demanding, "Give me your best piece of meat." And the butcher said, "But every piece of meat is the best meat." The butcher continued, "There's no piece of meat here that's not the best." And with that, and it's a very famous story, Banzan found enlightenment because he suddenly realized that all moments are good, all experiences are good. In fact, yes to everything. So there are three yeses and three no's. So let me see if I can share this slide. Right. Yes, there we go. So really looking at back or what we just, a quick summary. And the question really is, are there no's that are sabotaging us? Can we say yes to life? So again, the quote from Howard Thurman, don't ask what the world needs, ask what makes you come alive, and go and do it. But in this quote, are there hidden no's? No's from the society or culture we find ourselves in, or no's from our personal environment, resistance from those around us, or even from within us? And then can we say yes? Can we say yes like the caterpillar says yes to become a beautiful butterfly? Or the chef with that mixture of excitement and experience creates something special? Or even like the Zen master Banzan, who basically said yes to all things. So then we're ready for the next breakout. So far, how are we doing?
Yeah, yeah, we can get started. You guys ready for the breakout room? What is the question, Carl?
So the question is, are there hidden no's that are sabotaging us? When we choose ourselves to do something special in our lives, are there hidden no's that are sabotaging us? Or can we say, yes, I'm going to do something special with my life. I'm going to find something meaningful that's going to make a difference.
All right, so let's get into the rooms. All right. Welcome back. How did it go? Yeah? Do you want to share? Play, please.
Oh, we had a wonderful conversation. The word authenticity and the ability to be authentic. We were at the very end talking about being in a totally different environment, a different place, where the scripts that get reinforced in our normal environment aren't there. And so the subtle no's that appear are gone. And we have the opportunity to be authentic, and making that contrast consciously can be real telling as to what scripts are we listening to.
So
There was
Claire,
there
yeah.
was one other thing, is how no is ingrained. No, I agree. Oh,
Mm,
dinner's not bad.
mm,
Why not say it's nice? Or just I agree.
interesting.
Mhm.
And Claire, you raise a very deep psychological topic, the contrast that you raised, because it's in the contrast that you start to learn. So when one starts to experience contrast, it's in those contrasts that new things arise. Probably the cornerstone of systemic psychology. But finding contrast and exploring them is a wonderful way to learn and grow.
Yeah, it's the same as, or said another way, the tension of opposites, right?
Yes.
In holding.
Mm. It's like pulling a bow, it has tension to it. And then, Sunny, you had some comments there.
I think he's left because he had something going on.
All
Yeah,
right.
but there's Scott. Scott, please go ahead.
We had a great conversation. It wasn't long enough. As per usual, we were just kind of getting our flow going and got ripped away back to the main room. I think that I keep this little redirect on my desk because, the brain cannot process a negative, and the brain builds what it hears. So when you say, don't think of an elephant, you're all immediately thinking of an elephant. And so if we're aware enough to understand that process, instead of saying don't fail, we can replace that with I'm showing up fully as an example. And we talked about that difference between the brain and the gut and our flow versus creating from a place of ego or a place of learned beliefs, maybe learned misbeliefs. And saying things like don't lose this creates a different outcome than I'm focused what I'm building. And so those are kind of important dynamics that take time to learn from the brain and learn how to help support your flow. So that's a very topical. It's very topical for me right now, and stay out of that loop.
Thank you, Scott, for sharing. Thank you. Luther, please.
We had an interesting discussion in our group. I started off with I find it very difficult to say yes to no without context. I normally use some form of context. I don't think any one of us can just say yes or no, just on a whim. They have to have some type of context. For me, for example, is the way we think. The way we think is basically based around three things: how we reason, our insight, and our self-knowledge. That plays an important part of how we decide, because there was a model on power thinking that's using these three domains. Your strength in these three domains gives an indication how powerful your thinking is. So that is just a context, and each one of us just alluded on what they use as a context to come to a decision, yes or no.
What do you say to that, Carl?
Well, Luther, yes, that's a very important point, because if you study things like Ho'oponopono or awareness from the Buddhist perspective, the best thing one can do is have one moment before we react. So, and in that moment, that is where one raises the ideas that you said, is what is the context? Should I wait? Should I leave it? If one's aware, what one does is there's always that moment of silence before we react in any way, which then allows us to respond thinking about the items you mentioned.
Okay. Alfredo, please.
Yes, I will. Having that moment requires a lot of self-consciousness, because we react in extremely fast ways. Our subconscious mind reacts in fractions of a second. And thus it requires practice. And to practice, you have to be very self-aware in that sense. So this all comes to about your level of consciousness, self-awareness. Because if we do not have that, in reality, we go in automated pilot, defined by our past experiences. If we don't start judging, then we will keep going in automated pilot. And most of the population goes like that.
Which is exactly why the next topic is self-reflection. Are we ready to explore self-reflection?
Yes.
Right, so I just want to turn on my light because it's getting dark here. And
So self-reflection, when I hear this word, I think about journaling. So I'm just wondering how many of
No,
you
no,
here
no.
in the room actually journal on the regular basis.
Well,
Yeah.
that
I'll,
It helps.
it's one of those habits that I feel like are super important, and I get something out of it when I do it, but then I'm not consistent with it at all. And it's so therapeutic, right?
well, let me weave the journaling into. So one of the things I really enjoy because I prepare for these presentations is how can I weave a question like that into the presentation that I've already done? In other words, a type of impromptu is quite a nice challenge. So let's see if we can, as I go through this, I'm going to try and weave in the concept of journaling. How's that? Good. So my definition of self-reflection, it's really a mechanism to find meaningful possibilities in a way that supports and encourages our unique strengths. So finding meaningful possibilities to support and encourage our unique strengths. So if you want to talk about journaling in that concept, can I journal and then look at what I've written in a way that what can I learn from this journal that will support and encourage me to explore my unique strengths? And I might just add as a side note that when people are feeling stuck, you can actually flip the script of stuck by actually creating choice. So moving from a few unappealing options to a range of meaningful possibilities, because the opposite to stuck is meaningful possibilities. So again, in the concept of journaling, if we look at the journal and say, what meaningful possibilities are in here that I can explore, is a way to make sure that stuck doesn't happen. So let's just go again. So the whole thing about meaningful possibilities is my overall process to take on a challenge that is meaningful, empowering, and then embrace that challenge with self-reflection. And then when the sabotaging emotions arrive, because they will, to forgive those emotions. So, and we're going to look at three very different ideas around self-reflection, and then once again a breakout room. So the first one is constantly on the lookout for opportunities and ideas. So if we want to grow and develop, we need to be constantly exploring ideas and opportunities. So in the midst of daily frustrations and anxieties, we really ask, well, is there a sweet spot that allows me to leap forward, a portal of opportunity into a better future? So it's not about having a better day. This is about having a different day. So, and then once again, sharing with friends, attending events like today, opening our minds to different possibilities, reading books, exposes us to many, many opportunities to choose from. And then on this journey, we get those light bulb moments where the brain says, hey, look, there's a good idea. And the heart says, well, yes, let's do it. And you get that congruence between the heart and the mind, a willingness to pursue that and learn more from it. And as Safa mentioned, taking time each day to reflect and seek answers is a very good practice, whether you call it journaling or just a simple mechanism of taking time to have a coffee and just reflect what questions do I have. So really, again, so my first thing is constantly on the lookout. What are others doing? Can I learn from? The second one is being aware of sabotaging emotions. And we know really getting a little to what Alfredo pointed out, this awareness of what's happening around us. And this is a personal note. So that we started off with that story of the young people from Indonesia that were required to build these roads as part of their community service. And as I build the road builds me. And my self-reflection has always been, how can I find something online that is meaningful and I can be passionate about? So that is really my self-reflection. But the part that really fascinated me about this is that the insights I got were often not about building an online presence, rather insights around personal growth. So all too often I'm reflecting on how am I going to build my online business, and what I was getting were these insights on personal growth, and very often with perfect timing. So as I built my online presence, guess what? The online presence was building me. And then we've just come out of a breakout room about choosing ourselves and the potential conflicts that we get from society and these secret messages that we're not even aware of. But the thing is, these are not necessarily conflicting forces, because we can use self-reflection to find creative ways to engage with family, creative ways to engage with our careers in a way that it's mutually beneficial. So we can really use self-reflection to get really imaginative around how we explore our circumstances regarding both family and careers, because we want to show up with confidence and innovation. So taking the time to do the self-reflection and choose ourselves can be strategic. And then the last point I want to raise is the whole concept of developing intuition. And developing intuition is it's very important for us to learn how to trust our unconscious mind to bring ideas and insights. So to trust our unconscious to bring up, because those ideas and insights help enormously with making good decisions and good life choices. So this idea really comes from a book called Before You Know It by John Barge, who was a professor of psychology, I believe, from Yale. And in his book, he had a chapter, The Unconscious Never Sleeps. And the really reason I mention the book is he's putting science behind the concept of intuition. And this is what he says: your unconscious knows what your important goals are by how much you think about them and how much time and effort you put into them. So your unconscious knows these are important because you're thinking about them and you're doing something about it. And then behind the scenes, your unconscious is working on your future constantly. And he goes on to explain that the unconscious mind uses your actions, uses your thoughts to come up with material and then work on your future constantly. So taking action, focused thought, we empower the unconscious to come up with ideas and insights and then to help us make good decisions and good life choices. So we are now back at the chat, and it's share. What is self-reflection? So self-reflection in my thing was the mechanism to find meaningful possibilities in a way that supports and encourages our unique strengths. So really practically, how do we find meaningful possibilities? How do we find spelling error, opportunities to forgive the emotions as they come along? And we looked at 3 ideas: constantly on the lookout, and then being aware of those emotions that are sabotaging us, and developing intuition with action and focus. And as we know, the journaling is an important part, because you can use journaling to see what you've done and where there are opportunities to look up, being a part of being on lookout for opportunities. And also journaling can also help you by looking at the journal. What sabotaging emotions am I reading here? So there are the questions for the breakout room. How are we doing so far?
Yeah, you guys have any questions about the question? If you would like a card to put it in the chat so that everyone
yes,
have access to it.
I'm going to do that now.
Yeah, the question is in there. All right, see you in a bit.
All right.
Yeah.
What can we learn?
Would like to share? Come on, don't be shy, you guys.
Okay, I'll start. We had some good contributions in our group because I have to be off in 4 minutes, so I'll jump in and give my share, and then I can explore it later. The same is thinking in terms of reflection. Like, for example, to reflect, I use process, and I use the ladder of inference to help me unpack my thinking and expand my thinking to come to the right reasoning and thought pattern I want to apply. I've put in the chat just the 6 steps of the ladder of inference. It was a great help for me just to expand my thinking and explore the alternatives to make sure you take an informed decision or your reflection before you take a decision to make sure it's informed.
And then action comes after, right?
That's it. That's the last. That informs your action.
Are you going to be talking about this next week, Luther?
No.
Because you're going to be facilitating next week.
Yes, something totally different.
Oh.
But likewise, there's always behavior and actions form our lives.
So the interesting part about that, if we go back to Benzon, the man who found enlightenment, is that by reflecting, we almost pre-assuming that there's good in what's happening. So by taking time to reflect and explore various ideas, there's what's known in NLP as a presupposition. We pre-assuming that there's good in here and that there are things that I need to learn. So let me just see what those are before I respond. So it's almost like a presupposition that there's good in this. Any more shares?
Yes, that's quite an interesting conversation. The reflection is extremely important. That doesn't necessarily lead to change. How do we jump that gap in the sense of having the knowledge and the need to change, and then changing in reality? Because our subconscious mind will defend itself towards change. If it thinks that keeping the same behavior will make our life easier. So there is a big challenge there. So the first step is, yes, in reality, be self-aware of self-reflection. But then we need to learn techniques on how to change behavior. Even if you have the motivation, it's not a guarantee.
I totally agree. So I'm going to, yeah, you're right.
Yes. Go ahead.
So the point you'll see in a minute, I have a masterclass that I'll tell you about in a second. And the main topic there is, well, how do we know that we're not just thinking about this and that there's actually change happening? How do we know that? And what do we do about it? So that is, in fact, as I'll mention on masterclass, and it is a very important thing, is in a workshop like today, one has to choose which pieces to discuss. And so I have a master, but that is really the topic, is how do you know that we're not just thinking about it and there's actually real change happening, and that we are in fact growing and learning and going to another level. What other shares do we have?
Go ahead, Joanna.
So I was in the same room with Alfredo, and to me, it's self-reflection is the first step, is the foundation for change. But to anchor the change, I think we need to go to metacognition, which would be the second step of, really looking at our own behavior, and then having techniques to repeat or be disciplined on what that change needs to be. But it's still no guarantee for the change to happen. I mean, I guess self-reflection would lead to metacognition, which would lead to action to anchor a change.
Well, Joanna, the great ecosystemic Bateson, and I'm trying to remember his follower's name, the systemic psychologists would say that the only way to get change, according to them, is to think about your thinking, which what you're saying, metacognition. And metacognition, as far as I know, is an NLP term. The thinking behind it is that, so even today, a lot of what we're doing is thinking about what we're thinking about. But what Alfredo is saying is one more level. It's a metacognition. In other words, I'm thinking about my thinking and I'm living my life, but now I want to think about that to see, am I really changing? So you're now thinking about thinking. So but you are correct in that the systemic argument is that reflecting upon our reflections, and going back to Safa's daily journaling, reflecting on our reflections is, according to some people, the only way to change. I believe that dealing with the emotions that are sabotaging you is probably a better way, but be that as it may, it is a very powerful technique. So,
can you guys think of an example of a situation where change happened easily, smoothly, without forcing it? Yeah, Alfredo?
Yes, there is a technique that is used in mindfulness. Let's say, for example, that I have a boss and I am afraid of my boss. Every time I encounter him, I will be afraid. So I have to subtract myself from that situation and really live as if I was in front of him or her, without any fear. And you feel it with all your senses. Like if in reality that was happening, you see yourself standing in front of her, fully aware, without fear, and you feel it with all your senses. When you do that, you are communicating to your subconscious mind. And if that feeling is stronger than the fear you had before, it will change. So it takes a bit of practice, but it's used in terms of, this is used also to treat smoking or phobias or fear, where you see yourself, how would you like to be in reality, full empowered, without fear, but you have to feel it with all your senses, because your ego doesn't know about context. And once you feel it for your ego, it will be like if it was really happening.
Have you tried it, Alfredo? Like in practicality, has it worked?
Yes, I will send. I will post a video that is on TED that talks about this, talks about these techniques, and I've read about it in several books. But this video in TED is pretty good. Let me see if I can find it.
Sure. I'm curious to know about you guys' experiences. Hanan, please.
So just before you go, Hanan, Alfredo, you're absolutely right. What I'm suggesting is you not only deal with the fear around the boss, but you also reflect upon where has this happened before and deal with that one. So in a therapeutic situation, which I can't do therapy, I'm not a therapist. In a therapeutic situation, what they'll say is like, where did this happen before? Did you have an uncle that you feared? And so to then deal with the uncle you feared and the boss would be, it's the same process, it's just a lot more powerful. Hanan?
Yeah, I wanted to say that I perceive the whole thing as a process and an ecosystem. So if I want to share my example about speaking up about Palestine, because I live in the Czech Republic, it's extremely supportive to Israel when it comes to government and people. And after my transformation, when I worked on my thoughts, I worked on my emotions, I understood them, I understood where they were coming from. I worked on my self-esteem, on my beliefs, and on my belief in myself, in myself and in God. Then I found it extremely easy to start speaking up and or to resign in the corporation and to send a letter to the management and to the branch offices worldwide. So it's absolutely about the fear that Alfredo mentioned. The fear diminishes when you trust yourself. So I don't think that it is easy to work only on your thoughts or only to self-reflect or yeah, we have people who are avoiding their own emotions. Then it is difficult to work on the emotional part unless they put the intention to work. And there is another thing, the intuition. You feel when is the right time and the right place to do the thing that you want to do. Your intuition it's really a very deep wisdom coming from the soul, and the soul comes from God. It tells you, yes, this is the right time to do it. No, wait, you still need to work on this or that. So this is my experience.
And that's excellent, because you did healing and you now have evidence that your behavior and your the life around you has shifted. So we know it worked because there's real evidence. You didn't just think about it. You can look at your life and you can look at what's happening around you and you can see it has changed.
Yeah, absolutely.
And then also having healed and having the healing, you then could also use intuition to choose the right time and place, which was also done with let me quickly, as Luther was saying, it was also done with care and precision. You didn't just react. You thought about it and you applied your intuition before responding, as Luther was mentioning. Very good. Safa, we probably need to move because it's 10 past. And
Unless anyone wants to share anything before we move to the next session. No, we're good. Okay, well, feel free to raise your hand if you have any questions or anything to share. Carl, please.
Yeah, certainly. I'm just going to quickly show you my slide. Let me just quickly see, does this work? Yeah, so I do have a masterclass. It's 2 sessions, $180. And the first one is exactly what we've been talking about now, reaching your potential. How do we know that we're making a difference? Instead of just thinking about it, how do we forgive those emotional blocks that sabotage our efforts? What is working? What's not working? What steps actually appear in the healing journey so that we know that we're actually moving forwards? And then the other section is really mindset. And reaching your potential with mindset as a healthier, productive, it's a lifestyle change. This is not force. You know, a lot of people talk about mindset and habits, like, you know, we force it every day and it'll happen, and get up at 5 in the morning and things like that. That's not what I have in mind. It's really just a case of finding mindset changes that can help us reach our potential. So, and there, the link is there, and I'm going to stop sharing and put the link in the chat, and we can then start. There we go. So if you'd like to join, there's the link. And section number 3, and then we can go to the close.
I have a question for you, Carl. Because we've talked before and you mentioned a couple of times that, you know, like you referred at least to artists and, you know, actresses and so on, you know, having like a script and timestamp and, you know, like being very organized. What sort of mindset do these people have, like to be really good
that's
at what they do.
I'm going to give you a very deep answer. If you have not healed and you have serious emotional issues that are running in your mind, that will be done by force. In other words, you'll set the alarm, you'll get up at 5 and you'll do the swimming training or the gym or the whatever, and you'll make it happen. If you have healed your life and you're in a state of flow, which is a word you mentioned earlier, it'll happen anyway. Because as you heal, the decisions you make, they just happen. So, I mean, I remember I've actually moved from Johannesburg now. I'm not there in the morning. But what surprised me a lot was that I never set my alarm for the Pilates classes, because I said in my mind, you need to get up at about 6 to get to Pilates, and guess what? I woke up at 6. So, so the thing about so my theory is that the really, really successful actors, they just do it anyway. There's no, that is just how they are. It's their passion, it's their love. It just happens. That answer your question?
Yeah. I mean, it does take a lot of motivation, I suppose, but also like,
So I would say that the more you heal the emotions that are sabotaging you, the less motivation is required.
okay.
I came aware of a technique that is used because my youngest son is studying acting. You can either evoke your emotion, past experiences, or you can work in by building masks. And you start only with your face. You develop, for example, a fear mask or a surprise mask, and you anchor that. You practice that a lot until it becomes automatically when you think of that emotion, and then your whole body will follow up. And that's conditioning your body to act like that. So actors develop like 10, 15 masks. And that's their toolbox. In what way? Those who study based on that technique.
But then to challenge that a little bit, Alfredo, I think what the point that Carl was making a little bit earlier is almost saying almost the opposite as well, isn't it? That when you're in that flow state, it's not, you're not even wearing a mask. And then when you look at some of the really good actors who do method acting, it's like Heath Ledger in like Batman, for example, right? Or some of the other, like Robert De Niro in Raging Bull. Like they do method acting and they're not even wearing up. It's like they play that role all the time. And Heath Ledger, who commits suicide, is a classic example of it, where he became that person, didn't he? So there's some, it's really.
But you know what's funny? That yes, I agree with you. But this methodology was also developed by Stanislavski, the one who first developed the. Let's call upon your past experiences and your emotions. But so I don't know. I'm not an expert on this, but I guess those ones who are in the flow will come more naturally.
No, but I think that's the point. Those that are in the flow, they're all doing the same thing, but the ones in the flow are doing it easier.
Exactly.
Yeah, and that really quickly, that intuition point that Hanan raised has really got me thinking as well, because I work in change management and everything needs to be planned. So every change that you do has got to have a very logical thing to it. So in my head, I was thinking, like, is there a case for intuitive change management as a whole new product that we could launch? And it also reminds me, have you read The Celestine Prophecy by James Redfield? Has anybody read that? You must have read it. Oh my God, I'm getting lots of blank faces. Carl's read it.
And I read it.
A long time ago, right? It's one of those books. And Celestine Prophecy is like one of those like Paulo Coelho type books where it's all about like self-discovery and all that stuff. And it talks you through these 10 stages. And I remember one of the stages is, Hanan, it's about intuition. And like I think one of the girls says to the guys that the sixth insight is intuition or something like that. If you chat GPT Celestine Prophecy and give you the 10 intuitions, they'll come up with it really quickly. But yeah, it's the intuition part is a very, very big part of flow as well, I think. And some of these method actors are so intuitive, aren't they?
Can you write it on the chat, Sonny?
Yeah.
The name, please.
Cool. Safar, can we go to the next section?
Yes, please. We have
So
40 minutes left, so yeah.
no, we're going to be good. We're going to be good. We're going to be good. So we started talking about today, reveal the gold within, rewiring our brain to show up as the best version of ourselves. We looked at changing our internal state to show up, which we've been talking about today, interacting with others. And then if we can change how we interact with others, we can show up in our best way. And that way we can ask people in the right way and get what we want. And the process really there was find something challenging and meaningful, powerful, and then embrace those challenges with self-reflection, and then ultimately forgive the emotions that come up because we made that decision. But really, in the context of extreme emotions with a very challenging task, we need to realize that those emotions are actually the vehicle to unmask the blocks that are sabotaging us. So it's really about having a willingness to acknowledge the situation, the circumstances, the frustrations, because by becoming aware of what's holding us back. So really what I'm saying is when people talk about symptoms like being unworthy or stuck or imposter syndrome or overwhelm, often these things are only there because we have chosen to do something meaningful. And this is a game changer, because when we get these symptoms, it does not mean that there's something bad happening. So these symptoms like unworthy or stuck or imposter doesn't mean there's something bad happening. It doesn't mean, it's not an indicator of failure or an indicator that we're incompetent, or, what we should really see them as telling us, giving us information that we can learn and grow from. And an important benefit of the same process is that by taking on these things and then looking at these emotions and healing from them, increase the sense of safety. And safety is a terribly important thing because our brains are wired to keep us safe. It's called survival. And so it really helps to, if we take on a challenge or a thing, and to see these emotions as giving us information on what we need to do, that really helps the brain find safety, and it helps your thing. And actually, it's quite interesting. I listened to a presentation earlier where a consultant was saying that she consulted to some serious billionaires and the like, and they had the same problem. They would go up a level and take on a massive project, and guess what? They had the same emotions that we have, but they've gone up a level. And once again, they needed to find ways to heal those emotions so that they can find that level of safety and continue to perform. And these ideas come from, well, the ideas of today have really come from the stories of alchemy as popularized by Carl Jung. Carl Jung, as we know, him and Freud were sort of early pioneers of psychology, and alchemy, as we know, was an art that sought to understand chemicals and metals, and they had goals like turning lead into gold, philosopher's stone, elixir of youth, and in many ways not very similar to the cookout we mentioned earlier. What's the alchemist doing? He's got a cauldron or a pot, and he's got chemicals inside, and they're bubbling away to make some amazing experiment. Well, not all that different to the cookout we mentioned. But from these stories, and from, as popularized by Carl Jung, there were two insights that I really want to mention. The first insight is that Carl Jung, in the experiment of turning lead to gold, he said, but rather than try and turn lead into gold, it's a lot easier to reveal the gold that's already in the lead. And that could be applied to human nature, that in order to be our best selves, probably the easiest way to do that would be to reveal the gold-like qualities that are already there. And then the second insight, which you've also discussed a bit today already, is that as they pursued this focused action, this focused thought on the experiments, they found that they themselves, their personality, their nature, their character, also started to turn from lead to gold. And it's sort of believed that, and we mentioned the book earlier, I think about a minute, Sunny mentioned the book, where the theory that if you...
The Alchemist.
The Alchemist, yes. The theory that if you do not change your nature along with the experiment, that the experiment would fail. In other words, if you do not change your nature yourself from lead to gold, then the experiment would also fail. In other words, it's inextricably linked. So in conclusion, we're motivated by the rewards of success, the desire to do something meaningful. But what happens with that emotion is that we master the skills, as a mastery of skills to achieve a goal, but there's also an emotional skill to change our inner state, our nature, our character, to become that person, deepening our relations with self and others. And all of these, from the stories of the alchemy, are actually linked. They are all tied together. So that brings to, and we've got 5 minutes. We can still do it, hey?
I have a question, teacher.
Yeah, yeah.
I want to know, like, how much is your environment responsible for the way you think, the way you act, and for your results?
Well, the short answer is it creates no's and yeses that you're not even aware of. So that's the short answer. And they're a lot more subtle than people are prepared to admit. A lot more subtle.
Mm. Mm.
So the environment does play, and really, so that's why my whole process is do something meaningful and exciting. Choose yourself. Ask what makes you come alive, as Howard Thurman said, because it's when you do that those messages start to reveal themselves. Then you start to see, if I can put it more vividly, when you take on something empowering, the society, the culture starts to undress itself.
Yeah. So choose your friends wisely, choose your environment wisely.
Well, you'll also start to notice which friends are there, because when life gets tough, it gets tough, eh? And you'll start to notice who are your friends and who aren't. Because believe you me, yeah. Look, I mean, I'm not kidding. Taking on something seriously meaningful can be a tough journey. Let's not kid you. But again, the message is, see it as a learning, as a growing, as society and friends and culture undressing themselves and showing them who they really are.
Mm. Mm.
Just that link again, I'm just putting in the chat again. You guys, if you want to know more, there's the link. Right, so we have time. Safa, you can lead the
Well,
show
I want to hear from those who haven't shared, or if anyone would like to share.
Yeah, no, let's go.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Not yeah, no.
Yeah.
Yes, no. Yes, let's go.
Yeah, Joanna's been very quiet this session, I've noticed.
Yeah.
And Sharif was also very quiet, I've noticed. At least they're smiling now.
Thanks, Sharif.
I've spoken, Sunny, you just disappeared. So I want to say a small thing. Safa asked a question. You know,
I've just been taking it all in, Sunny. It's been very good.
Have you been able to notice a change without effort? And frankly, I've been thinking about your question the whole time. I think change without effort is very difficult. Now I've been able to notice one, not on myself, but I did for my child. When my second one was born, he was crying all the time. He was like a little bit of a tough kid. And we started to call him the pirate, and we call him the boss baby. And, you know, we gave him all those cute names. But I started to think that I didn't want that to be imposed on him. So I changed my words and my vocabulary for years. So it didn't feel like an effort, because I've done it slowly over the years. And his behavior has changed. And his approach has changed. So I think we can change with less effort when we do very small things every day. And that goes back to what Yun said in the session, repetition of the right behavior. That's it for me, Sunny.
Yeah, being consistent and just keep on doing it. Like, although you don't see the results straight away, you have to be patient with yourself, right?
Yeah, and just to finish the story, my kid is super sweet, and he's since he's 7 years old, he decided he was going to be a healer.
Wow.
How old is he now?
He's going to be 10 soon.
Oh.
Waiting to learn how to heal, how to massage. is trying to find people that can heal physically and mentally. And he didn't start like that, clearly. He was kind of a little evil.
So,
Cute.
Johanna, what I'd like you to notice is at some level, you too must have been growing and learning for your son to have had such a good experience.
I believe,
yeah.
Tafa mentioned about the environment earlier, and we can choose our environment as adults. We cannot really choose our environment as children. So I believe it's the parent to provide the best environment possible. We do what we can with what we have, but in order for those kids, my kids and every kids around, to have the best experience while the programming is being implemented.
I'm asking you to acknowledge that you too were becoming a better version of yourself, which has had a lot to do with that success.
Thank you.
Joanna's 100% become a better version of herself. I've known her since the year 2000, and she was like amazing then, and she's amazing now. So she's gone through a massive transformation. I don't want to make her blush anymore.
Thank you.
So is Hanan, so is Hanan. Amazing.
Hanan as well. But I was going to say, the only thing I want to complain about Joanna is like about 100 degrees Celsius and she's wearing a turtleneck jumper. That should not be allowed. It's literally making me hot. Look at her jumper. How can that even... So Safa, can we make a rule on ExpertEase that there's no more turtlenecks allowed? Thank you. If we're all agreeing with that, thank you.
There is a wonderful study made by Marcial Lozada, who is a Chilean, with Emily Heffield from the University of Wisconsin, on the impact of positive reinforcements. And in reality, we don't do that as much. He found out that high-performing teams use positive reinforcements versus corrective feedback in a proportion of 6-1. And that's counterintuitive in our society, especially with kids. And it's much more powerful to praise a kid when he's got his room all in order than to scold them when they are all disorganized. Because what we want to do is to foster the behavior, the positive behavior. So in that way, that we start working against many no's that are in society if we use more positive reinforcements.
That's a powerful message, right? And it's a good one to end on. Carl, last word to you before we close the session today.
Yes. So interesting enough, it's thought that Carl Jung actually said it goes deeper, that when all said and done, it was never about the goal. It was always about becoming that person. And if you think about the cookout I started with today, when we get to the end of the day and all the meals are prepared and we're sitting around tables and we're chatting and we're sharing this great food, we begin to wonder, was it ever about the goals, or was it always just about enjoying the day at the end of the day and
the journey,
sharing with the food? So there's my thought. And as I build the road builds me. Thanks, Safa.
Thank you, Carl. Thank you, everyone, for your participation today. I did leave a link for feedback because I'm looking for feedback. You guys share feedback anonymously, or you can put down your name. Could share feedback on today's session, on our regular sessions in general. You can also suggest topics, speakers. I welcome all sorts of ideas, and I'm really thankful for many of you who write to me in private, helping us really grow this community and the format of the events. Thank you so much, Carl. Today it was really insightful. I think there's a lot of information there that we need to digest. I put down Carl's workbook. You can download it. Yeah, I shared it early on. So make sure to save the chat with everyone's contact details so that you don't miss the links and the connections. Next week's going to be Luder facilitating the session, and it's going to be on how to be triumphant. So I think it's a nice like your session today is going to lead us to becoming triumphant in life.
Oh, excellent. Very nice.
All right. Thank you again, everyone, and great seeing you, and see you next week. Bye.
Thank you, Carl.
Bye.
Thank you.
Thank
Thank you.
you. Bye bye.
You. Bye.